Welcome to part 2 of this episode of Autism Unpacked, where we're discussing life after school and preparing for the future. There's lots to talk about, so let's jump straight in. Everyone's needs, aspirations, and future will be different. One young person's journey and hopes will be very different to another. It's really all about the individual and a holistic approach. Take a listen. A lot of neurodivergent children or young people really struggle with change. And the idea of leaving somewhere where they may have been for, 7 years and going out into the big world is quite terrifying. How do you manage that?
I think that's the key, and obviously the key in the termination of future and not careers. Because with everyone, there's this feeling that you have to make huge life decisions right now, and you have to decide. I had a young person say to me just recently, but I don't know right now what I want to do for the rest of my life. And it feels like it's such a massive, massive decision that actually, life is all about lots of small decisions, and you don't need to make those big jumps now. And for us, the futures conversation is all about right where they are right now. And the reason that the team kind of evolved was, and I always remember this young man, my very, very first day in the job 4 years ago for Options Autism. I visited the school and I spoke to a young man, and we talked about his aspirations and what he wanted. And he said to me, what I want for my future is a certificate to put on my wall. Oh. That's all I want, because his brother was at university. His mum had his degree certificates. His mum had, the certificates up the stairs. And he said, that's what I want for my future. I want a certificate that I can put on my wall. And for a young person that wasn't at that point taking any qualifications and exams, it's not about then saying, well, you're not going to achieve that because you're not doing the exams. We created a work experience package that has certificates at the end of every module.
Oh, wow.
We create, within our curriculum, unit awards that are achievable for each stage. So a young man in one of our options schools who, his conversation with me was, and this was nothing against his mum, for my future, I don't want to live with my mum. That's what I want for my future. He wanted to be independent. He wanted to own his own home. He wanted to be able to make his own food. He wanted to be able to, get himself ready on the morning, get himself dressed on the morning. And that's his future. That's what we were working towards. And we didn't have conversations about leaving school, going to college, going to university, because that wasn't relevant to that young man. My careers meetings with him, our futures meetings with him, was we worked towards gaining a unit award, which would give him a certificate. So initially we started off with him learning how to make a cup of juice. Okay. So he would make us juice for the meeting. So it was selecting the right cup. It was making sure he selected the right juice, put the water in, made us a drink. Now he makes me a cup of tea when I go and see him. So we've progressed up the awards that he's achieved, but also he's working towards that aim of being independent and that aim of being able to one day live by himself. And I think that's where many, when we speak to other schools and parents who have young people who have a diagnosis of autism, and this process ourselves, Ollie, sound quite scary, because for some young people at this time, it's not going to be college. It's not going to be university. It's not going to be employment. And it almost feels like, we are, I'm going to say pointless, but in the stereotypical sense, why do they need us to tell where they're going to go next in terms of a job, a career, a future? But that young person's future, that young person's journey, it can happen at any time. We get young people come back to us when they're 25, 29, 30, and they're then asking us to help them get into college, and they're then ready to do it. I went to college at 30. There is absolutely no time scale on when it's meant to happen. And I think, again, going back to things being archaic, there is this kind of stereotypical, you finish school at 16, you go to college at 18, you go to university, you get the job. And that's not how life happens now. that's, and it doesn't need to be that way. And our focus at Options Autism is, that key word of being holistic.
Yeah.
It's focusing on that young people's emotional health, that young person's physical health, that young person's social well-being, making sure that they have hobbies, interests, making sure that they understand how to advocate for themselves, making sure they understand what they do like and dislike, and how they can build a life for them which is successful in a way that's impactful to them, not the way that previously in society we're expecting to measure success.
Next, we're looking at how preparing for the future is about enabling access to the tools, facilities and scenarios that might best help them. And I'm thinking of the parents now, if your child receives a diagnosis of autism, and particularly perhaps if it was a complex autism. So you're aware that your child is probably not going to follow the traditional academic and career path. How would you perhaps explain to the parents, maybe Ollie, do you want to take this one? And how would you explain to them what options might be available to their young person?
I think it's interesting because I had a conversation with one of our head teachers a couple of weeks ago about how people feel about getting a diagnosis and then what support needs to be put in place for their future. And he was saying, I don't really understand how parents might feel in this scenario. So we created essentially a story about it. And I said, well, imagine you going on holiday. Where would you go on holiday out of interest, Rosie? Where would you pick?
Where would
anywhere
I go?
in the world?
Oh, Thailand. There we go.
Fantastic, nice. So what sort of things might you take with you to go to Thailand?
Oh gosh, I'm not prepared for these. I would take some sun cream,
nice,
some bikinis, some books. Am I taking my children? We'll pretend not in this situation.
Yeah, just yourself.
So lots of books.
Yeah.
Some clothes, that sort of thing.
Nice, and you prepared for the weather that you're going
yes.
to actually experience in Thailand.
Yes.
Okay, so imagine you get on the plane and you end up in sort of northern Scandinavia and it's snowing everywhere and all the rest of it. Does that make visiting that place a bad thing?
Oh, it's just because I wasn't prepared.
All that's really going to be required, thinking about it, is going to be a change of outfits and maybe a quick Google search to try and work out what attractions are in your local area. It's a different approach and a different holiday, but that doesn't make it any less fulfilling. And I think a lot of parents are going into it thinking that they've maybe failed or that they're not particularly achieving anything because the destination isn't what they'd prepared for. Mm-hmm. Where I think what we do as careers professionals is actually support both the young person and then their families in order to have the right clothes, to have the right sort of attractions nearby that they might go and visit. We're giving out them access to those tools.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting and really rewarding part of this job. Things like immersion rooms that we've got in our schools as an example.
Oh, what's an immersion room?
I love them. I think they're fantastic. I'd happily go and just sit and spend loads of time in an immersion room.
Is that where you do most of your careers advice?
There's one school in particular that I use their immersion room every single time I visit. And the way that we use them, so essentially what they are is a load of different projectors on all four walls, the ceiling and the floor. So you can project an entirely 3D world, sort of like a VR goggles, but without the sensory requirements and pressure. I was just going to say
the sensory requirement of wearing goggles is quite a lot.
So we use immersion rooms quite often to simulate real world environments. So I had a student who'd never gone on a train before in his life. But part of one of the things that he wanted to achieve is he wanted to go to London for the first time.
Okay.
Lived near Brighton. And he wanted to travel to London because he heard that it was an amazing place to visit. Everyone was telling him it was fantastic. And a lot of the sort of career aspirations that he had, a lot of the roles were all around London. So he wanted to go on a train for the first time, but wasn't sort of comfortable with visiting a train station until he'd seen one. So we actually created a train station in the immersion room. And him and I sat in there and had a conversation, and we listened to some of the things some of the sounds that you might hear in a train station, the tannoy, the people around them having conversations, the noise of the trains on the tracks. And we highlighted these and we talked about them as all potential sounds that he might encounter. And we almost swapped notes, me being an autistic individual and him having autism as well, both with sensory difficulties, but in slightly different ways. we were comparing notes, almost like sort of a game of top trumps.
Yeah, which annoys me more kind of thing.
Yeah, that's it.
Could you make the smell of other people's sandwiches though? Because that's one thing that drives me mad on a train.
Yeah, but and people on speakerphones.
Yeah, no, it should be illegal.
It's an odd one.
Yeah.
It really is. But it's stuff like this that like we have the real like pleasure and a fantastic opportunity to do, is to prepare these students for a lot of real life scenarios that a lot of neurotypical people might take for granted that they can just access.
Yeah. Now, Ollie, I've got to ask, did the young person get on the train?
Yeah, they did. So it was about a sort of 6 months building up process, but actually they then went on a train to go and watch a theatre production as part of their English lessons.
Wow,
after that.
So 2 big achievements.
Massive. And then the next time I saw him for a guidance session, not long afterwards, he was talking to me about the fact that he'd gone on this train to London, had seen this wonderful, magical place that London was. And I was like, well, how did you feel? Because that's huge. Well done. And he was like, yeah, it wasn't that like
it wasn't all that bad.
It wasn't all that. It was fine. And I was like, but would that have been fine a year ago?
Not been prepared.
And he was like, oh no, it was the biggest obstacle in his head. And to go from that to it's fine is significantly bigger an achievement than I think a lot of people realise.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Yeah, we took our autistic son into London on Sunday, and actually it has been a process of desensitisation, little trips out, and now he will come into London and behave beautifully and loves it. But a couple of years ago, had I just said, right, we're off into London on a busy Sunday in December, no way.
Supporting individuals with complex needs. There are lots of opportunities out there in the real world. It may take some time to achieve, but let's listen to how there's something out there for everybody.
And what sort of future or careers are you able to offer to 2 young people who have got quite profound or complex needs? Where might you be suggesting that they look?
See, I think the world has changed in terms of next steps and options, and this is where we come into. If you spoke to my parents, they'd probably tell you about apprenticeships, college courses, A-levels, GCSEs. Whereas there's a big world out there. We have a lot of young people who go to things like supported internships, in which there is a job coach that stays with them all the time, who is helping them prepare in the real world for those next steps, opportunities. And they do start with life skills. They do start with familiarization of buildings and opportunities, and they build to preparing those young people for the world of work. And that's always the end goal. It could take 12 months, it could take 2 years. And that's the nice thing about them, is that unlike college courses where there is a definitive end date, with supported internships, they are working to support that young person into employment. And it doesn't matter, the scenarios that you would think you would never be able to do and you would never be able to work in. I volunteer at the moment in my local area in a cafe, which is specifically set up for young people who have visual and hearing difficulties. The young man that I mentor is completely blind and has no hearing and has Down syndrome. And makes the best cup of coffee that I've ever had every time that I go in. And I think it's not about, it's about finding the right thing for that young person and where that young person fits. And there is something out there for everybody, for absolutely everybody. And I know it's a huge world with a lot of obstacles to navigate. And that's where we come in for parents, is taking the best interests for that child's voice, whether that is in a physical capacity or by observation. We do a lot of observations in schools of what that young person engages with, what they particularly enjoy, and we can build a really comprehensive picture of opportunities for that young person to explore. And that's where your work experience comes in. It's not about what's in the guidelines of one opportunity before they're 18. It's as many opportunities as we can fit in. It's as many times as letting them experience that real world to really find out what they enjoy and what they're passionate about. And no, we are here to take away the barriers and take away the obstacles and help parents and guide parents through that journey, because it is a journey, whether, your child has complex needs or is, if I'm myself, neurotypical, it's still a journey in which there will always be a chance to grow and there'll always be a chance to learn. And there are some, I say, very good employers out there who absolutely would be perfect for our young people. And that's where we're really good as a Futures team, is building those relationships and making those links with providers.
Journeys to a fulfilling future are not always direct. The pathway to where you want to get to can take many twists and turns, as we're about to hear. Now, Ollie, when you left school, you didn't have many sort of traditional qualifications, did you?
No, I just about managed to get through my sort of 5 GCSEs, just about scraped through those. And because I'd not really been given much careers advice other than I didn't have to work, I had no idea what college courses to apply for or anything like that. The only sort of vague bit of understanding I had about the world of work is that lots of people had told me I was good with children.
Okay.
When I'd had younger siblings or family members, friends with children and things like that, they'd always said that I was good with children. I was like, all right, fine. So I guess that's what I'm going to go and do at college then, is childcare. Did my level 3 in childcare. Actually met my wife on that course.
Oh, did you?
Which was fantastic. But then finished that and went into the world of work. And very, very quickly realised that childcare wasn't something that I wanted to do.
Thinking it's a lot of sensory overwhelm.
I now know that, I was massively overwhelmed the entire time I was working there. And in fact, I took 30 under 2-year-olds to Paynton Zoo.
Oh, my goodness.
And handed my notice in the same day. And so then with no careers education, essentially, about what the future might look like, I bounced around a load of different jobs. Did not understand what I wanted to do. Worked in a men's clothing shop because I was like, well, I know what I wear. So maybe that's what I'm going to do for a job. And then eventually had a careers guidance session in the job centre with someone who was just going to sit and help us write CVs and maybe think about what types of career paths I was going to look at. And I kept watching him and the way that he was interacting with people and realising very quickly that he had a little bit of information about loads of different types of career paths. And I was like, well, I'm pretty good at memorising information. And other people, I've had this really rubbish experience of careers education and careers guidance and all the rest of it. I fancy giving that a go. And so he came round to me when he was doing my CV and was like, what type of jobs then are we going to look for you? And I was like, yeah, I kind of fancy doing your job. And he said there were no opportunities and stuff like that available.
I bet he did.
But he offered me some work experience.
Oh, wow.
And I was essentially just typing up CVs for the beginning part of it. But pretty much every single week I went into my manager's office. Her name was Amanda. And I said, I really want to work for you. Can I work for you? Every single week, pretty much. Every Friday, go in and have that conversation with Amanda. And it took me probably 6 months before she said, well, have you thought about an apprenticeship? And so I did my level 4 apprenticeship in advice and guidance through her. And she really reframed to me what work was. I thought it was just a thing that you turned up and got money at the end of it and that it had no real sort of meaning. But she taught me that I could be valued for my job and I could be valued for the skill set that I had. And then, and that actually autism wasn't stopping me from working.
As you're saying that, it's making me feel a little bit emotional because I think for the first time you were probably being told that you were validated and that you could contribute and make a difference. And I'm thinking back to that little boy that was told that, there's no point getting qualifications, you're not going to work, you're basically not going to contribute to society. And now you're being told and you're learning that you can and you've got something really valuable to offer. And that must have been a really powerful moment for you personally.
Yeah, and I've had some both really positive and really powerful moments with employers and really negative sort of moments. And both Amanda then and then the employer I went to afterwards, who my manager Tim, I said to him, one day because I was thinking about like my autistic characteristics and what used to hold me back and what wasn't holding me back anymore. And I said, how have you managed to turn this into a success? I'm interested because this fascinates me. And he said, well, it wasn't difficult. It was just about rearranging or reframing the questions in a way that suited you. So instead of, because at the time I wasn't driving, instead of saying, I'll pick you up same time, same place, it was, I'll pick you up at 9 o'clock at the train station.
Yeah.
And he said, that's all I needed was a change in language.
So that really minor adaptation made everything so much more manageable.
Yeah, huge. And then unfortunately that place shut down. So I had to move to a couple of other different jobs and fell into some sort of managers who really didn't understand autism. Some of which were working with in education at the time. And one of those even telling me at one point that actually, all I needed was just my autism slapping out of me as a child.
Whoa.
Yeah. And that was from someone who worked in education.
Wow.
And so I sort of spiraled backwards again, and sort of autism again was this negative thing for me. And it took me then until I started working for, initially for one of our schools, the Greater Horseshoe School in Devon, before people were looking at me as autism here for a staff member is an absolute superpower. And is a fantastic thing for me. And actually coming on board with Kelly and Kelly's team, she does a fantastic job at managing us all individually and differently. So I know a lot of our team have one-to-one chats every couple of weeks, but without us communicating that, Kelly understands that's just not the way I work.
Yeah.
We and Ollie talk in the car on the way home.
Yeah.
See, car chats, right? And
Yeah.
there's nothing more
Chats.
terrifying than in an email, or can I have a word?
Yeah.
That puts the fear of God.
We have a very blunt relationship, don't
Yeah.
we? And it works.
That's it. But
It
it's that
works.
belief.
I'm
I
just
think-
also thinking, Ollie, as well, about the kind of negative connotations of autism that were put upon you, and how being diagnosed and subsequently the kind of the negative messaging that you received around your autism, and how you've managed to turn that around and now are talking to autistic young people and telling them this is not a limitation on you. We'll find an opportunity, we'll find the thing that works for you, and you will thrive and you will have a wonderful life as well.
Yeah, that's it.
And I think to be able to turn what essentially is a trauma, because it is, into something that helps others is a really incredible thing that you've done.
Yeah, and a lot of my students, I'm very open with my students about the fact that I am autistic and I have struggled a lot in my life. And I've had some fantastic conversations, therefore, with students then about, well, you're succeeding, so that means I can. And I think that is such a powerful message. And there is no, I am your teacher and I am in charge of these sorts of things. We learn, we explore together. That's it. And I think that power dynamic is so much more useful to a neurodiverse person than having that sort of I am in charge and you are not in charge thing. Again, so Kelly and I, Kelly might be my manager, but rarely will I ever call her my manager, and rarely will she act like it.
It doesn't work. I think I can clearly remember the first time that I met Ollie. And then we are a very large group and we have a lot of schools, and I work with a lot of careers leads, and it was right back near the beginning of supported internships, and Ollie's school had messaged me and they said, we're looking at supported internships. Could you give us some advice on it? And I'm thinking, it's new territory for me. I'm going to have to research. And they said, Ollie's going to give you a ring. And Ollie came on the phone and taught me in 30 minutes
everything you need to know
that I could ever need to know. And this pattern continued, that we have forums within our group in which all of our careers leads meet. And we share best practice, we share ideas, we share what really works with our young people. And Ollie was not only there in a sense of him attending. He was supporting everybody that was in that group. He was giving them very personalised from himself experience of what they could try and advice and guidance. And he was such a big presence that I said to my manager at the time straight away, I need him.
Yeah.
I need him. He wasn't mine when I first started. He belonged to a school, but it was so clear out of a room full of 80 people that were sat there, this one person who just was so passionate and enthusiastic and incredible that I just needed to have Ollie on the team. And we've had conversations before about Ollie's had reference to, his to empathy and, him being able to. Ollie is, one of the most empathetic people I've ever met. He supports my team incredibly. He supports the careers leads, he supports the students. And when we're thinking about characteristics and traits and stereotypes, as a person with a diagnosis of autism, Ollie's apparently not able to
I've been
sympathy for anybody.
I've been caught out having empathy before in previous employers.
Did you make eye contact as well, Ollie?
Yeah. I know. Imagine.
Can't possibly be autistic then.
Yeah, no, we had a situation in one of my previous jobs where a member of staff lost a family member, sadly, and I turned around and went, I'm really sorry that you've lost your family member. I appreciate you grieving right now. Let me support you. Let me help you. Let's get some things done so you can leave early and go and do the things you need to do. And instead of being supportive, my manager just went, that's empathy. You can't do that. You're autistic.
Wow. And
I just think anyone who ever tells me I can't do something normally just makes me more stubborn and more prepared to actually go, do you know what? I'm doing it, whether you like it or not. And I think, again, that comes down to me, the difference in the way that you manage someone maybe with a neurodiversity of some description. You're not necessarily going to sort of explain what can and can't be done in your role. It's more about encouraging and supporting and being the individual to help sort of ground them rather than directly telling them this is the way things go and this is how you're going to follow it.
And this is what we say for all of our young people, that as Ollie's found, yes, on paper, they are something with traits of a certain thing, but
everybody's individual, right?
Everybody's individual. And it's, it is irrelevant when we find where they belong in life, because they will absolutely thrive. And
it's that take a step back, slow down, reframe the question, and then work at it and understand that everyone is going to get it wrong.
Yeah.
And as long as people understand that they're going to get it wrong and are prepared to learn from that, I think that's where we need employers, education providers, us, where we need to be.
I'm really lucky that in a roundabout way, I was a children's nurse with a specialism in palliative care. And a lot of the young people that I worked with throughout my career were complex needs young people. And I didn't know that those skills and that experience at the time was going to transfer into this role. And qualifying as a nurse actually helped me be a better futures advisor, careers advisor. And, where you are now, you might be sat there thinking, this is not what I want to do and where I want to be, but it's never a wasted experience because you are picking up so many skills.
And even if it just shows you what you don't want to do.
Exactly. Yeah. For any young person out there who is, or any parent, carer, family who is reaching that point where they feel like they're making the biggest decision in the world, and parents say to us quite a lot, I'm really scared of making the wrong choice. I'm really scared of making the wrong decision. I think this is the right decision, but what if? And that or what if seems like the biggest thing at the moment, but it's okay. It's okay to not be sure. We say to our young people all the time when they speak to us at year 11, and the standard question is, what do you want to be when they grow up? And they say, well, I don't know. And that's okay. That's okay.
I think it's almost better to not know what you want to do.
Yeah.
Because I think that gives you way more opportunity to just have a load of fun and try loads of different things out. I was chatting to a student the other day and he always reminds me of my story. And part of the reason why I love this job is I am fascinated by our young people's stories, the stories of their life, how they've got to where they are, the journeys they're going to take. And I was explaining this to a student, and he said, if you think about it, what your role boils down to is reading our story and maybe suggesting a chapter title or two. And he said, you're not going to write the words for us. You're not going to tell us how our story is going to play out, but you might suggest the next chapter title. And I thought that makes a load of sense to me. And he's right. We're fascinated by our student stories and the stories that everyone has. And every single person's story is so interesting and different. And you can put people in completely exactly the same circumstances and have entirely different outcomes. And it's just fantastic.
The Futures team will be there for as long as the help is needed. Support will not stop just because the individual has finished school. And for how long after they leave education are you there for them?
As long as this team exists, we will be there for those young people. We have young people that come back every single year who have left years and years. I've got a young man who, got in contact. He left when I very first started 4 years ago, checking back in, letting us know how he's doing, actually asking for advice on his UCAS application because he's going to university. Wow. So they do come back and they do ask for that advice because it is a journey, and needing that support is not going to stop because they've left secondary school. They'll get college support potentially if they go to college, but who's going to help them find that first job, that second job? Life is unpredictable and they need somebody there. Everybody needs somebody there at every step of the way.
Hypothetically, if a young person has gone to college or into employment and they are struggling, they are not managing the adaptations that aren't there, would you step in at that point, or is that a bit above and beyond?
We build such relationships with our young people that we are there to advocate for them and their parents at any time. And parents do come back to us months, years after the fact, just for a little bit of advice, support, guidance. We do work really well with colleges that have transitioned our young people because sometimes there is a change in that level of support and there is a change in that ability to cope initially. We can put on additional sessions. We put in extra support for parents, carers and families to really make sure that that young person has that bubble around them to be able to manage. And it's not always the right thing that we've chosen. We don't make the right decisions first time every time, but we're there to then open out the field of options to make sure that it's there again. And that's for every...
And even that's part of the process, isn't it? It's teaching these young people that sometimes it's not the right choice and you can change your mind. And I think that's very important because you feel when you're at school and you're being told, these are the possible career options, that you're going to then be pigeonholed into that for the rest of your life. You changed career later in your life, didn't you? You've changed career, I've changed career. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the road you have to stay on.
I wanted to be a nurse when I was young. I wanted to be a nurse.
Be an actress.
Yeah. And I did. I went to college when I was 30. I went to university when I was 34. I got a degree in nursing. I did 7 years as a nurse, and I hated it.
Oh, did you?
I hated it. I don't know if this is, as they say, in the blood. My nana was a teacher. My mum was a teacher. My sister's a teacher. And I always said, I'm never going to work in education. I'm never going to be a teacher. I'm breaking the mold. And I'm in education. I've fallen back into education.
Slightly different, though. You've sort of,
slightly sidetracked. Different. But I think, it's never too late. And when I first started in careers guidance, they're saying that the highest age for people changing occupations now is in their 40s.
Yeah.
And for our young people, for any person out there, there is always time to grow. There's always time to develop. And Ollie has a lovely analogy he uses in a car and the journey that you've utilised before.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I always say imagine your life like a car journey. Yes, you might need a destination in mind to put a postcode into your sat-nav on something similar, but that doesn't mean that you're going to stick to that route the entire way through. And you could change that destination at any point. And quite often people do. As I say, I'm from the southwest. There are loads of really nice places to stop and have a picnic or change your destination or all the rest of it down where I am. There are times where we've gone out aiming for going to a beach somewhere and wandered up onto the moors instead and had a fantastic time. And I think that reflects actually a lot of people's career paths. It is not just one straight linear line. And actually very, very few people have a job for life now. So many people diversify and do different things and cool things and have multiple streams of income and all the rest of it. And I think that's the best way to be, because you're always excited, you're always learning, and you're doing something new.
Thank you, both of you, for coming on today. You have brought with you some incredible insight and some fascinating stories. I think the clock punching is possibly my favourite one from today, Ollie. And for anybody who's listening out there, if you'd like to know more about the Futures team, you can visit Options Autism online, or you can follow us on our socials. Until next time, take care.